What's up, buddies? This is Jonathan Max Ready Mintam here with a Dark Hero deck profile. This is one of actually my favorite decks in the entire Buddy Fight game. I've been playing it now since October. It really actually helped me get back into the game, which I love a lot. And they've had some interesting support and stuff. I right now am been playing this current build now since the set of the Inverse set release, and hopefully we'll get a few more things. I know they've announced we got this Schwarz Krugel 13 Impact or whatever coming out that destroys all monsters in the field. Not necessarily a game-breaking card, but definitely interesting to say the least. But this is what I'm going to show you today is my deck for Dark Heroes. So we're going to start off with size zeros. We run Noble Knight of Darkness, Kill Knight. I like this card a lot. It replaces, in my mind, Nebbit, and you could even get rid of Thief-Cath if you still run that, even though Thief-Cath is really good for the 3 crit. But this card is really good because if this card is put in the drop zone from the hand, you can either put the top card of your deck into your gauge or put a card from your opponent's gauge into his or her drop zone. Plus, it has the ability to, at the end of the battle, if this card is on the field, if you have a Dark Hero item equipped, you may return it to the hand. So it has multiple things, so it kind of acts as like a boomerang if you have the Dark Hero item, and it also acts, for me, as a discard cost. I don't think necessarily getting the gauge is that ultimately that great, but if you're using it for, say, like Schwarz, it does allow you to make up for your loss. But I like to make sure I get rid of my opponent's gauge, because that way it stops them from playing spell negates and rests and all kinds of things, depending on what they are playing. So it's just a really decent card, so you don't mind getting rid of it from your hand. So we run 3 of that. Size 1s. A little bit different on the size 1s. We for sure run 4 Scar. Basically, it's a 4/3/4 that has the ability of being destroyed at the end of the battle. It's been pretty staple, I think, in a lot of Dark Hero decks for most people. I mean, the best part is you can call 3 of it and have 9 crit on board waiting. Like, it's really good for that. Makes your opponent really gotta make sure they know what they're guarding, because essentially if they can't rest it and it goes away, you still can do other shenanigans, which is really nice. I play 3 Darkness Fist Gwen. You have another Dark Hero on your field. This card can attack you if there's a monster in your opponent's center, so it acts as a Shadow Diver, and then when it deals damage, it bounces back to your hand. Really good in some of those size 3 brick decks. I definitely think like Asmodai has been really good, you know, like as far as, or this deck card is really good against like Asmodai, because you bounce back, and they don't have really a way to deal with it unless they can nullify the attack. And they're not going to per se attack the Gwen afterwards. They'll definitely try to destroy it or call something to get rid of it, but it's not the worst thing. Again, they have to focus more on dealing with it than you losing it, because you can always get more, which we'll show you how. Then we run 3 Schwarz SD. This card's really good because essentially it's a free card. When it enters, you may discard a Dark Hero from your hand, and you put the top 2 cards into your deck from your gauge, and at the end of the battle, return this card to your hand. So you can discard Kill Knight, get rid of it, get 2 gauge, and get rid of your opponent's gauge, or you can get 3 gauge, depending on what you really want to do. So it's a really nice combo to utilize. But Schwarz, I usually just try to get the 2 gauge and then get rid of, say, Kill Knight or something like that, and mess with my opponent's hands. And then right now, I just run 2 Shadow Hero Ys, because this guy has a pay 1 gauge. When it enters the field, you may discard a Dark Hero again. So go get Kill Knight. You can either make up that gauge or make your opponent lose a gauge. And you pop an item on your opponent's field, and then you return this card at the end of the battle to your hand. So it's really nice because, again, most people run a weapon. I mean, there's not too many decks that don't have weapons. So you're always going to kind of get this guy off to a degree. And if you don't need him, you discard him for you pay your cost. But again, I run this over, say, Nameless Assassin, which I do sideboard. Just because I think the item destruction is more important in the long run. And some people are like, oh, why don't you run Iron Moonslash? You can ping your opponent for 1. I prefer the bounce back, because you already have a lot of things that die naturally, like Schwarz. dies and the other stuff bounce back to your hand, so you're not really losing hand advantage per se. And then this guy really is nice, but again, he just dies at the end of the turn, and you can ping for once per turn. So not overly bad. Just again, I would prefer the item destruction over the ping for damage. So so that's the size 1s, size 2s. Now here's a lot of people know me. I love Schwarz. I think he's one of the coolest looking units, and his whole outfit and everything. He's just really cool. But I only read him at a 2. For the longest time, I read him at 3 or 4, and he was my buddy. And then when the whole kind of deck changed, his value decreased in my mind, and not necessarily in a bad way, but he's a good 2-of because you can search for him in this deck, or again if you draw him, he's not a bad draw because he can be a bad draw because you have to pay a gauge and discard a Dark Hero from your hand. Again, you can discard Kill Knight, make up for your gauge loss, but again, you have to constantly keep discarding a Dark Hero from your hand. And he's great for the destruction and everything, and of course, Dumbstrike is great because it can destroy a monster in your opponent's field. So any monster that they have, you can get rid of. It doesn't matter size or anything. So there are a lot of decks that do have a hard time dealing with this. Say again, like Asmodai, like you can get rid of him and without a problem. And really have an interesting matchup for the rest of the turn because he pretty much can do a lot more. Like he's 2 attack or 2 crit. Again, the combos that go work for this deck, it might go off. Him and Schwarz or him and Scar in the field, it's 5 crit automatically, and then if you get your let's say item or your 9th Omnilord Justice Murkrow, he is really, really good for this deck. He gives you a 5k D, which is nice. But also at the same point, he's transformed. He is basically a double attacker. Yes, you have to pay a gauge to equip and pay a gauge to stand him, but he also gets a crit. So he does a lot of work in his own right. So again, if he attacks on his own, say twice successfully, that is a total of 5 damage. And again, if you have a Schwarz, which is 2 damage, that's 7. If you run a Scar, which is 3, that's 10. And that's not including anything else you may have. So again, the combos, they're very rushy, very fast. So again, having something like that is really, really good. And Schwarz again bounces back to the hand. Murkrow is really good because again he can stand. And he's again gives you that 5k butt that you want. So a lot of the little things that your opponent would maybe attack with can't necessarily go off unless they link attack. And then last but not least, we run 4 Violent Valor Lord Crow. This again, you get a free gauge when he comes into the field, and then if there's another Dark Hero on the field, you destroy the card. So is it a huge loss? No, because you are getting a gauge for it, and it does help for early. What I love to do if he's my first turn play him, get a gauge, and then just keep him there as long as you don't play anything Dark Hero wise, because then he's there, he's a defense, and he just sits in the middle, so your opponent again has to get rid of him, and he's kind of served his purpose, which is nice. So size 3s, none, zilch. We don't run any because 1, they're too heavy on gauge, and 3, they sit sometimes, like especially Anson. Anson's great to call back things like if you had Nebbit and stuff like that, because Nebbit would allow you to, you can play that build. This is more again aggressive rush, get things out as soon as possible. Anson to me is a great card, but not necessarily in this particular build. Like he's just there to be there, and I don't really like to run him because again he's 2 gauge. You can get 2 calls essentially if you had Nebbit and something else. And then there is Braden. Braden's really cool because you can get rid of your things in the field, but again, for 2 gauge, there are other things that are faster, quicker, and I think a little bit stronger in the long run, and free. Like you can deal with it, and I'll show you what we're talking about there soon. So not necessarily needed. I personally, I don't, unless they make something grade 3 that is cost effective. Right now, you don't need them in the deck. Your grade 2s are going to put in the most of the work, so Murkrow especially. So spell-wise, of course, we run 4 I've seen through your moves. Really, really good. Right now, I've been testing 3 There I See It. Basically destroys opponent's size 1 or less monster in the field. I have been testing, and I do like Stop Right There, so I do sideboard the other one, because some decks do have a lot of heavy double attackers. And this card is really good. So it rests the opponent's monster. If they have double attack, maybe even triple attack. So but I right now feel like this there I see it is worth main deck worthy field. So definitely goes in there. Then 3, but he is of the lowest rank. Basically, when your size 1 or less Dark Hero is destroyed, you can then cast this card and search for a Dark Hero monster or item and put it in your hand. So a lot of times you will search out the things you need, of course, but I usually always like to search out Mirko. If you need destruction, Schwarz, or if you need gauge acceleration or item destruction, whatever. I mean, you can search out whatever card you need, which is nice. So that is why we went 3, not 4. 4 I feel it gets a little cloggy. And then, which actually combos really nicely, is I'm Finished With You. You destroy a Dark Hero on your field, you put the top card of your deck in your gauge and draw a card. So you can play that. Because you're destroying the monster, then you could activate Bussy of the lowest rank. You might be able to even draw what you need, but then you can search out something else. So if you have a pesky Kill Knight that you can't use, pop it, get a gauge and draw, and then search out if you need to, which is really cool. But, and the first thing you should do is you play your first Dark Hero Hideout. You play that, play your Kill Knight, the thing you want to kill, get your free card. Then you do, I'm Finished With You, pop it, gauge, draw, then you play, but he is of the lowest rank, get the card you want, and you're all comboed in, you know, like 3 cards that work really well together, like the holy trinity of Dark Heroes. Again, there are a few things in sideboard-wise, but now that we have an item or a transformed item, we can now run Adorius Training, which is a really great card for several reasons. 1, it works on our Mirko, and basically you pay 1 life, you choose an item on your field, and for that turn it gets 5,000 attack, an extra crit, and penetrate. So, if your opponent has something in the center, and you're like, okay, well, I don't have enough to get rid of that, you play Adorius Training, and then you hopefully have some Gwens or something, you Gwen, 2 attacks, maybe 3, depending on what's going on, and then you go and you put your Adorius Training on this, Adorius Training on this, and then you attack for 10,000 with 2 crit, penetrate, then you pay a gauge, stand it back up, and then attack for 3 crit, then you attack again, and it gets a 4th crit. So it gets, essentially, it can have up to 7 crit on its own just by paying 1 life, and that is scary. And again, a lot of people have to deal with that. So, and again, it also has penetrate. So anything you call in the center is totally hosed. Dark Heroes will ruin it. I don't play any other items, and again, which is really funny because they don't really have many, but Sneak Judgment is an awesome card for draw, but I feel like the deck works so much better being so much more aggressive right now, because if you're not going to win, you know, the first couple turns, it's going to get really hard for you going forward. So Dark Heroes definitely have a more early game advantage because of all their high crits and fast attacks. So, and then we do run an impact. We do run one of the best impacts in my mind, Infinity Deathcrest. We run it 3. When your opponent's life is 4 or less, and you have no monsters on your field, and you have a Dark Hero item equipped, you may pay 2 gauge, which is not that hard. Schwarz SD gets you that gauge, and deal 4 damage to your opponent. It cannot be reduced. So usually this is your win game because your opponent will spend so much time shielding and things. You'll dwindle them down at least to 4, and then where you can cast this. So it is definitely worth its weight in gold. I love the whole deck. I think again they're getting some more support where there's News Krugel. This Schwarz might be fun against me. You know, like say you could say against Dungeon because they play a lot of little ones, a lot of little things that are super annoying. You could blow up their whole field. It still does 2 crit. I wish they just gave it something a little bit more. And someone was like, oh, for an extra gauge, you destroy all their monsters on their field. But again, you have to do it at the end phase, and you really want to push for game. That's why this Infinity Deathcrest, I think, is going to be the card no matter what that goes in. But it's a Schwarz, so I'll more than likely just pick it up and have it and try to make it wonky. I think the combo that I really like with this Schwarz is the there's the spell that that has Anson on it. There it is. You could maybe go an alternate route where your opponent's monster is destroyed, put the top card of your deck into this card's soul, and to double 4 more Dark Heroes. or 5 or more, sorry, you win the game. So it could be a lot of fun doing that, and trying to go for that, since that Schwartz would work. You can keep bouncing that Schwartz impact back to your hand. So just again, an alternate win condition, kind of fun thing that, again, in the long run, could be really interesting. So what I do like about the Schwartz, it doesn't say that it has to have a blank field or anything like that. So again, if they keep your Gwen on the field or something like that that lives, you can do this. So it's really cool. But that's my deck profile, guys. Again, let me know what you think. Dark Heroes looking fun. Obviously, they're getting some support in the next booster, Buddy Rave, and maybe they'll get more in Buddy Rave because of all the Hero World stuff. So we shall see. Thanks again for watching, guys.